I became a millionaire at 37 years old and a multi-millionaire by the time I was 39. And over the last decade, I've helped hundreds of entrepreneurs scale 7, even 8-figure businesses. So I've seen what happens when people start making real money. Some people build incredible wealth and some completely blow it, not because they're dumb, but because they make a few common mistakes with money that destroys wealth. That's why in this video, I'm going to walk you through the 6 biggest mistakes high income earners make and strategies on how to avoid them. Because what I didn't know at the time was that making good money is only half the battle. What you do with it actually determines everything. Mistake number 1 is lifestyle expansion. Now, this is probably the most common mistake high income earners make. And honestly, it's really hard to avoid. As people start making more money, they upgrade everything. Bigger house, better car. Jamil, I have to have better vacations. They have more expensive habits. But what I did early on was actually the opposite. I came across a book called The Millionaire Next Door by Tom Stanley that basically broke down the characteristics of everyday millionaires in the United States. And I was surprised to learn that the typical millionaire was really boring. They drove used cars, they lived in modest homes, they were pretty frugal. So when my income started growing, I actually kept my lifestyle very low on purpose. My wife and I drove paid off cars, nothing sexy. I drove a Toyota Prius and she drove a Honda CR-V. Not impressive cars, but they got the job done. And more importantly, they kept our monthly expenses very low. Same thing with our first house. When we bought our first house, I could have bought a much more expensive house, but I strategically chose a $450,000 house in a good school district. Now, the house wasn't amazing at all, and it really didn't have to be because I knew I wanted to live there for a few years and then turn it into a rental property. Now, today that house pays for itself and it cash flows, and the value has more than doubled since we actually bought it. Now, at the time I was making about $300,000 a year, but here's the key. We lived like we only made about $80,000 a year. And that allowed us to save aggressively. Most people don't do this. Every time their income goes up, their lifestyle goes up. Look at their houses. It doesn't matter if it's a 2,000 square foot house or an 8,000 square foot house, they fill it to the brink because people struggle with delayed gratification. They sacrifice future wealth to look good today. Here's what I learned. Meet your saving and investing goals first and let your investments pay for your lifestyle. Give up a little bit of good today to have massive freedom later. Mistake number 2 is having no financial structure. Now look, you have no rules, money comes in and then it goes wherever it wants. I always tell people that's like having a house full of kids with no rules. They go to bed whenever they want, they wake up whenever they want, they have no chores, they have no responsibilities at all. And you already know what that's going to amount to, which is chaos. It reminds me of that book that I read a long time ago called Lord of the Flies, where all these kids were stuck on this island. There was no leadership, no structure. Everything turned into chaos. And that's exactly what happens with money when there's no rules. Now, you've learned how to make money, which is good, but you haven't learned the other 3 parts of money: how to keep it, how to grow it, and how to protect it from taxes. And that's why I started implementing something that I call the 10-10-10-70 rule, which I actually got that inspiration from reading a classic book called The Richest Man in Babylon. That book basically promised that if you followed this disciplined system, that you could build real wealth over time. The book said that it might take 25, maybe 30 years to become a millionaire. But in my case, it took 5.5 years. Structure changes everything. Listen to me, without rules, money is going to disappear. The 10-10-10-70 rule simply says whenever you get paid, automatically transfer 10% of that paycheck to savings, the other 10% goes to investing, the other 10% goes to giving away, and you should live off of 70% of your income. Mistake number 3 is delaying investing. Now, honestly, this was something that I actually struggled with early on, not because I didn't want to invest, but because I had a poverty mindset. When you grow up poor like I did, you tend to focus on not losing money instead of being focused on building wealth. You're afraid to take risks. You hold on tight to everything that you have instead of thinking about expansion. Also, investing just felt super confusing to me, and we know that a confused person's mind tends to do nothing. So when people face something that they don't understand or that's a little bit scary, they tend to do three things. They're either going to fight that thing, they're going to run from that thing, or they're just going to freeze. And that's exactly what I did, as I froze because I didn't understand investing and it felt really scary to me. And I would hear about this thing called compounding, Jamil, compounding, but I didn't truly believe it. And I saw the charts, but I didn't understand the power of it. And then I had that thing to where I would just say, I'll get to that later. Once I start doing better, once I have more of a spread, once I have a little bit more money, then I'll invest consistently. And as you know, that rarely ever happens. And here's the thing, once you truly understand compounding, everything changes. But delaying investing can cost you millions of dollars over a lifetime. Even if you just invested $500 a month, over a 30-year horizon, that's over $1.1 million. Now imagine if it wasn't $500 a month. Imagine if it was $1,000 a month or $2,000 a month or $5,000 a month, which is not atypical. We help our students do that every single month. Time is the most powerful force in this game of wealth building. Mistake number 4 is confusing income with wealth. And to be honest with you, this is a mistake that I believed for most of my life. I thought income meant wealth. If somebody was a doctor, I assumed they were wealthy. If they were an attorney, they were wealthy. Engineer, wealthy. Even when I got into higher level sales and pharmaceutical sales and medical sales, and I would see these guys making $500,000 a year, I automatically assumed they were wealthy. But eventually I realized something important. Income is not wealth. Income is just cash flow. Wealth is what you keep in what you invest. If your income stops and your lifestyle collapses, then you are not wealthy yet. You're just really highly paid. Wealth comes from converting income into assets. Wealth is basically how long you can survive if you stop getting paid. So wealth is less about money and it's more about time. So whatever your monthly expenses are, set a goal to obtain cash flowing assets that exceed your monthly expenses. A goal that I set early on was when my expenses were around $8,000 a month, I wanted to acquire enough rental real estate that paid me at least $10,000 a month. Once that happened, I would be infinitely wealthy. As long as my expenses stayed around $8,000 a month and my rental income was over $10,000 a month, I could effectively live forever without ever needing a paycheck. That's wealthy, and that's what you want. Mistake number 5 is letting cash sit idle. I always tell people that a dollar is never just a dollar. And a dollar never actually stays the same. It's either growing or it's being lost. And I used to have this false sense of security knowing I had money that was sitting right there. I think that I'd be better off if the money was sitting here instead of getting lost. But your money should actually be working harder for you than you actually work for it. And I've seen people do things like this. I mean, students that even come to us that have $50,000 sitting in a shoebox or $100,000 sitting in a checking account. Or I had someone that literally FaceTimed me and had hundreds of thousands of dollars sitting in a safe inside of his closet, doing absolutely nothing. Now, don't get me wrong at all. Cash obviously has a purpose, emergency funds and opportunity funds, but long-term money should be working. It should be invested and compounding and growing. Idle money loses value every single year because of inflation. Every single dollar should be little employees that are out there working for you. The great thing about a dollar, though, is it can work 24/7. The goal is to have those dollars make more dollars that make more dollars that make more dollars without you, my friend, having to do anything at all. Mistake number 6 is trying to figure out everything alone. Now, admittedly, I struggled with this early on, mostly because of how I grew up. I just simply didn't trust people. And when it comes to money, trust becomes even harder. Not only did I not trust other people, I was trying to be cheap and I wanted to save a buck and I really didn't want to pay them. And if it was a case where I did end up paying them, I didn't want to pay them that well. So there was a pivotal point that happened though. I got into some tax trouble and I ended up paying thousands of dollars. And an attorney friend of mine at the time asked me who was helping me. And I told him I did it on my own. And that's when he said, Jamil, you get what you pay for. Now that stung, but it made me realize something important. Wealthy people build teams. They don't go into an NBA basketball game trying to play 1 versus 5. No, they have teams of accountants and financial advisors and tax strategists and investment partners and mentors and attorneys, and they have their teams actually fight the battles for them. Now, today I never make big financial decisions alone. I just wouldn't do that. It's not something that we do. But one of the most important teams that you ever can build is your financial team, because the right guidance can save you from extremely expensive mistakes. So just ask the successful people around you who they use and interview a handful of them and see which ones have personally accomplished the things that you actually want to do. The key here is to make sure that they are practitioners, not just theorists, meaning they don't just talk about it, but they actually are about it. So to recap, the 6 biggest mistakes high income earners make are lifestyle expansion, no financial structure, delaying investing, confusing income with wealth, letting cash sit idle, and trying to figure it all out on their own. Now, if you avoid these mistakes, your chances of building real wealth go up dramatically. Making money is a gift, but income alone doesn't create freedom. Structure does, investing does, ownership does. When your money has a system, wealth becomes predictable. If you enjoyed this video, watch this video next. And if you haven't yet, click that little subscribe button to join the channel family here. And let me know what questions you have that I can answer on future videos. And until the next time, say it with me, no lazy money. I'll see you on the next episode.